enjoys his time today. So, got a lot of good handful of little ones to enjoy the church service. So, yeah.
Rough draft of 2,000.
I know, right? Why not? That's it. I love it. Good. So good. Now Rosie will have somebody else to enjoy and hang out with for Sunday school. Pretty soon the kids are probably going to start celebrating Sunday school.
Saturday
Work
the
on
20th,
Christmas
we might
stuff.
do caroling
So they'll all have
and
something to do
like
over
do some
there.
things
So
back and forth.
I'll be pretty entertained.
So we go out caroling and then come back and
It's always more fun.
have the candlelight service. And
Yeah. Oh yeah. More the merrier, right? I'm simple.
Although Lucy really
You like that?
likes that.
Yeah, I've noticed that. She doesn't mind just hanging out with the baby, so
Oh, sorry, guys, they were coming in the other way.
we're thrilled. We love that, so we're thankful.
You're gonna be here?
Right.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome. You guys match.
Yes.
Look how cute you are.
Morning, guys.
We've multiplied.
You two will probably take the back and stick
Oh, let's go. We got a stacked back row.
There's another chair up here by Audrey if you guys need.
No.
Make Matt sit up here.
Yeah, just separate them.
Let's put Uncle Henry front and center. Just direct us
That would
back
be
and
funny.
Just, it's just Dad's head in the live stream.
What's that noise?
Yeah.
Get out.
Well, it is about that time, guys. We are going to get started this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Sunday. Welcome to our Sunday school hour. We continue our walk through looking at the disciples. You know, and as we're looking at each of the disciples, John 17 is where we left last week and where we will begin this week. And there's no better place to begin a topic like this because Jesus is praying for the disciples, both from the apostles, you know, the 12 that follow Jesus to us today. So there are plenty of conversations to have here. John 17 will be our topic as you guys are turning in your Bibles. We will continue looking through the Passion and all the events, but as we are looking through it, you know, we are primarily focusing our first attention on Peter. Peter being, you know, one of the most prominent of the apostles, of the disciples, really the spokesman for the group. And he will come into prominence today, kind of fulfilling a conversation we started during the last Sunday of Peter's denial, when Jesus promised to Peter that you would deny me 3 times. And Lord willing, depending on timing, we may close with that today. We'll see how far we get. So last week we finished up rather briefly John 17, and there's a lot to talk about here. I don't think it's a problem if we start there again. So Gretchen, we'll lean on you to read John 17 in its entirety again for us. We are breaking down from Jesus' prayer. What is his prayer for the disciples? We worked out last week that this is both for us as well as for them. But what is he praying for? What's his desire for this church? Go ahead, Gretchen, take it away.
Who's asking you to start reading?
Jesus spoke these words, lifted up his eyes to heaven, and said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that your Son also may glorify you. As you have given him authority over all flesh, that he should give eternal life to as many as you have given him. And this is eternal life, that they may know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. I have glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work which you have given me to do. And now, O Father, glorify me together with yourself, with the glory which I had with you before the world was. I have manifested your name to the men whom you have given me out of the world. They were yours, you gave them to me, and they have kept your word. Now they have known that all things which you have given me are from you, for I have given to them the words which you have given me, and they have received them, and have known surely that I came forth from you, and they have believed that you sent me. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for those whom you have given me, for they are yours, and all mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I am glorified in them. Now I am no longer in the world, but these are in the world. And I come to you, Holy Father, keep through your name those who you have given me, that they may be one as we are. While I was with them in the world, I kept them in your name. Those whom you gave me I have kept, and none of them is lost except the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I come to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. As you have sent me into the world, I also have sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also may be sanctified by the truth. I do not pray for these alone, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they all may be one, as your Father are in me, and I in you, that they may also be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. And the glory which you gave me I have given them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I in them, and you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, that the world may know that you have sent me, and have loved them as you have loved me. Father, I desire that they also, whom you gave me, may be with me, where I am, that they may behold my glory which you have given me, for you have loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, the world has not known you, but I have known you, and these have known that you sent me. And I have declared to them your name, and will declare it, that the love with which you loved me may be in them, and I in them.
Thank you very much. So last week we discussed a few things, and I think the number one that we talked about, the prayer that Jesus had for his church, for the disciples, is unity. You know, that they are united, like God the Father and God the Son are united, with the goal ultimately for the disciples to know Jesus, because by knowing him, by being near to him, the church is united. One of the themes that we've seen in John, and certainly of the prayer, and for the reason for this, you know, what the practical application of this unity is protection from the rest of the world. The world, the evil one, those who try to oppose him. Then those are the big things, the big overarching prayers that Jesus has as he prepares his disciples to go into the world. Did you notice anything else? Anything we didn't talk about last week? A couple things that I think that are worth mentioning as items that the Lord desires for his disciples. Yeah, Isaiah, go ahead.
Protection from the evil one.
That's on
Yeah,
there.
yeah. No, you're great.
You were here last week.
He said it last week.
It's worth mentioning again, though. Yeah, it is protection from the evil one. You know, protection from Satan himself. Very good. Go ahead, Sharon.
That they might have his joy.
Yes, thank you. Very good. That was the other big one that I had on my list. Joy. That they might have the joy of the Lord. And really, this is a prayer of joy. You know, as much as you know we see little snippets between Jesus and his disciples, right, where there's disagreement. This whole supper, the prayer, the walking with them, is because he loves them, cares for them, and the joy that he has now presenting them to the Father, that's the same joy he wants the disciples to share. So what is that joy result of that? Where does that joy come from for the disciples? Go ahead, Isaac.
It comes from knowing the Father and
Yeah.
knowing Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing him, absolutely. Go ahead. Same thing. Yeah, knowledge of him absolutely is.
But it's not
One of
just
the areas of
knowledge,
joy.
it's walking with it, it's the relationship.
Yeah, it's the belief in the knowledge, but then it comes out in fulfilling that, right? Jesus' joy came from, I have the disciples, they know you, and I can bring them before you. And we have the same joy, raising up children, both spiritually and actually, that can know the Lord and present him to the Father. That is joy. And that is knowing true joy in this world. It's the selfless surrendering of ourselves to lead people onto Jesus. And as we've talked about, that is disciple making, right? Disciple making is the joy of the Christian life. Watching people overcome sin and know Jesus and go out to serve them or him themselves. Very good. Cool. So that was the other big one I had. Any other thoughts? Any other things that Jesus is praying for his disciples for? Yeah.
It's not really praying for his disciples, but he's fulfilling the scriptures so that, basically so that the disciples and the rest of us know that he is the Lord, and that everything that God has said previously is still coming true. Because they hadn't had any contact from the Lord for 300 years, so that's 300 years that none of the prophecies were being fulfilled.
Yeah, that's very true. It might not be a prayer for the disciples, but you're right, that's a conversation between Jesus and the Father, which matters for the disciples. It's the way they know him and have confidence in him. And you're right, it's a fulfillment of one of the purposes of John and Jesus' ministries, to say, hey, I am that Messiah that you've heard so much about from so long ago. Go ahead, Rich.
verse 11 is interesting because Jesus is talking like he's already ascended. Like the way that he's speaking is like he's already removed from the world, but there's still an awareness and a concern for like these are the people that are left that are still in time and are still going to be here, like in the present here and now, but also for the next several thousand years until whenever the return is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very good. And I love that. I love this passage for that reason. You know, because he's in the context, he's praying for the disciples. This is one of the few times where we see, you know, that if you want to call it that, the fourth wall is broken, and like Jesus is looking at the audience, looking at you as the reader of the scriptures, and saying, "I'm praying this for you." And that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, very good. Cool. Anything else? Go ahead, Don.
Christ, Jesus is going to the Father, so he won't be here.
Yeah.
But he's saying, I'm leaving them here. I'm not asking you to take them out of the world, but to protect them and keep them
Yeah.
keep them while they're there, which he does for us too, because we're still in the world, but we're not of the world.
Yeah. One of the results of protecting us from the evil one is from the world around us, right? As Satan is the prince of the power of the air, those that aren't his are his children to do his bidding. And so, being protected from the world around us, the powers that can harm us, and the persecution that surrounds a Christian, yeah, that is absolutely.
And basically that they will be a good witness.
Yeah. Which should give us confidence, you know, like, yeah, we can fear persecution, but when we act through it, we know that Christ has already won. Like, Christ has prayed for us to have victory in this. We can overcome that fear. We can overcome that emotional barrier that gets us to speak up and to share and to live out our faith. Good, very good. Cool, I think this is a good capture. We talked about this last week quite a bit, and so I don't want to belabor too much, although I love this passage. And thank you, Gretchen, for all your reading for us last week and this week.
And now be quiet.
So now yes, that's it. No, that's it for you. No, fortunately, we get a perspective of all the gospel writers as we go into the most important part of the Gospels, the gospel itself, the good news of Christ, that he died for our sins and rose again. And this is the beginning of it, because we see Christ, as we've seen in John 14 through 17, he starts at the supper, he goes through the gardens, and then he goes out to Gethsemane to pray. And that's where we pick up really the narrative of this, when Jesus goes with his disciples to pray. So we have Mark and Matthew give almost the same account. Luke and John, well, John doesn't have too much to say about this. John has been saying, kind of telling us the narrative so far. So we'll read Mark and Matthew, and then we'll read Luke and discuss the two. So let's just start by reading both Mark and Matthew. So I've got the passages for our gospel readers here. For Becky, Mark 14. It was a little weird, okay? Now I have it arranged. Can you read verse 26, and then 32 through 42? And then Noah, can you read for us Matthew 26, 30, and then 36 through 46? And then Isaiah, I'll have you read for us Luke 22, 39 through 46, and you've got no break in yours. So, you guys got that?
Yep.
I'll read. So I'll have Becky and then Noah, you guys can kind of just roll one right into the other, and then we'll pause for a minute, and then we'll have Isaiah read. So go ahead, Becky. Mark 14, 26, and then 32 through 42.
After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. They came to a place named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here until I have prayed." And he took with him Peter and James and John, and began to be very distressed and troubled. And he said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch."
Okay, thank you very much. To 42, actually, you can go all the way to 42. Oh, I wrote that up.
And he went a little beyond them and fell to the ground and began to pray that if it were possible, the hour might pass him by. And he was saying, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." And he came and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying that you may not come into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, he went away and prayed, saying the same words. And he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. They did not know what to answer him. And he came the third time and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? It is enough. The hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand.
Okay, thank you.
If only Jesus gave him a cure egg.
Yeah, no, you can pick up for us Matthew 26, 30, and then 36 through 46.
And after singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and told his disciples, Sit here while I go over there and pray. And he took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee with him and began to be grieved and distressed. And he said to them, My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me. And he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, So you men could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying, so that you do not come into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, My Father, if this cup cannot pass away, lest I drink from it, your will be done. Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. And he left them again and went away and prayed a third time, saying the same thing once more. And then he came to the disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. Behold, the one who is betraying me is near.
Thank you very much. So we have another moment here. We see a split. Jesus goes on with the disciples, and he takes along with him the 3, Peter, James, and John. The 3 that get to experience more, the transfiguration and the resurrections and being near to Jesus during important moments. And even he then goes out from them to go out and pray. And he has his prayer with the Father. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful to death. If it be possible, take this cup from me. The humanity meeting with the divinity in Christ, submitting to the will of the Father, but in his humanity, knowing what he will endure. And he comes back, and he finds the 3 at rest. And we see, I think Mark actually does something very interesting. In verse 37, he says,
He will in a minute.
He cometh and findeth them sleeping, and said unto Peter, Simon. He's not calling him by his name he gave him, and what the gospel records him as Peter. He calls him Simon, back to his old name.
This is like when your mom uses your middle name.
Yeah, I
when
was
she's
gonna say,
screaming.
when you get the full name, you're like, oh no.
Maybe that is the best takeaway from this, yeah. Simon, could you not watch 1 hour with me? And I think in our humanity, we just so identify with this. If it's like late at night and you're praying, you might get a little drowsy.
This was me on the couch
Hey,
yesterday.
They tell you if you can't sleep, don't count sheep, talk to the shepherd, alright? So, you know what? They did exactly what they were told.
But what is Jesus' response to them then in this? Because this is, this is important. Immediately after in Mark, it's Mark 30, verse 38, and then Matthew, verse 41.
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah, spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. For what Jesus is about to endure, and for themselves, this is a spiritual battle. For them to withstand and stay with the Lord, for Jesus to endure. Like this is a battle of not physical things, but spiritual. The trouble is the flesh being weak is unable to do the work that the spirit needs to do. And so after rebuking them, he goes away, he prays some more, he comes back, finds them sleeping, and then he goes out again. Just leaves them be, goes out and prays. And upon his return, he gives them the word, sleep on, take your rest. The hour is at hand, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners.
Until he says get up, so.
Yeah,
You
get
wanna
up.
sleep for long.
That's it, no more sleeping. Yeah, you've had your nap, and now watch what's gonna happen. And what happens is, and again, this is just such a picture of that battle, spirit and flesh. That's been pretty much our conversation with the disciples this whole time, right? Walking through the Gospels. Jesus is saying spirit, the disciples are thinking and feeling flesh. And Jesus is trying to break down that division and bring them to the point of thinking spiritually, acting spiritually. That's the difference. So we have just a little bit of difference, really just more of a brief version from Luke, but with some important details here. So Luke 22, 39 through 46 directions today.
And he came out and went as he was wont to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples also followed him. And when he was at that place, he said unto them, Pray that ye enter not into temptation. And he was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Be done. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed one more earnestly, and his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. And when he rose from prayer and was come unto his disciples, he found them sleeping for sorrow. And said unto them, Why sleep? Rise and pray, lest ye enter into temptation.
Thank you. So rather, really the focus on the disciples, and although this passage, even in Mark doesn't focus on that. Luke really more focuses on the state of Jesus during this time. Talks about the angels coming to strengthen him. You know, again, like this is spiritual. This is not a physical moment. Talks about sweating and drops of blood falling to the ground. Like this is the most intense and agonizing moments for Christ in his complement of his humanity and his divinity, where the divinity knows what needs to be done and cannot resist the will of the Father, cannot help but do what he is made to do, he is act in his own character. The flesh resists. The flesh does not, desire to go and suffer in this way. But, ultimately Jesus is divine as well as he is human. In his divinity, the spiritual side of him is what carries him through these moments. But for the disciples, really what can be said other than their rest, right? And this won't really be an emotional moment for the disciples until afterwards. Because while yet they know that Christ is said soon, while yet they know that there is coming, an event that will take Jesus from them, this is a time for them, it's nighttime, it's time to rest. But Jesus, knowing everything, knows the moment that will happen. And this is a moment for the disciples. This is a moment for really the two that have kind of caught the most in this walkthrough that we've done so far. Obviously Peter, comes into prominence here. But we see the final contrast of him and Judas as Jesus is betrayed and arrested. So, let's talk about it. We will begin in Mark chapter 14, 43 through 52. Matthew, Noah 26, 47 through 56. Isaiah, Luke 22, 47 through 53. And Gretchen, John 18, 2 through 12. And Becky, you can start us off. Mark 14, 43 through 52, please.
Immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came up, accompanied by a crowd with swords and clubs, who were from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now he who was betraying him had given them a signal, saying, Whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him and lead him away under guard. After coming, Jesus immediately went to him, saying, Rabbi, and kissed him. They laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as you would a robber? Every day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But this has taken place to fulfill the scriptures. And they all left him and fled. A young man was following him, wearing nothing but a linen sheet over his naked body, and they seized him. But he pulled free of the linen sheet and escaped naked.
Thank you.
Do you want 53 or 52?
You can read 53 for us. Go ahead.
They led Jesus away to the high priest, and all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes gathered together.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so yes, aside from the last little bit there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Well, you know, really Matthew has a lot to say similarly to this as well. Let's read Matthew again to get a very similar account, and then we'll break down what's happening here. Of course, Matthew 26, 47 through 56.
And while he was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, came accompanied by a large crowd with swords and clubs, who came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he who was betraying him gave them a sign previously, saying, "Whomever I kiss, he is the one. Arrest him." And immediately Judas went up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. But Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you have come for." And they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus reached and drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all those who take up the sword will perish by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? How then would the scriptures be fulfilled, which say that it must happen this way?" At that time Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as you would against a man inciting a revolt? Every day I used to sit within the temple grounds teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets will be fulfilled." And all the disciples left him and fled.
Thank you very much. So, again, similar, but a couple of different details added through Matthew and Mark, respectively. So each of these first earliest Gospels give us really a picture of Judas versus Peter. We haven't been identified as to this disciple who draws his sword, but spoiler
Yes.
for those that haven't read Luke and John, this is Peter indeed, who is the one to draw his sword in the fight. But we find Judas, the disciple who left during the Last Supper, come back, having retrieved the Pharisees and the scribes, all of their servants, having already before been paid to deliver Jesus. Judas brings them to where he knows Jesus would go, and gives the sign of a kiss to identify him. And then this is the moment, you tell me, what's the disciples' picture right now? You see Judas come, you see the swords and clubs and spears. What is this moment? Yeah, go ahead.
Viva Revolution!
Yeah, this is a fight, right? Remember the disciples'
Really
perspective is this is the fight for Jerusalem. It's a fight to capture, the Roman armies and overthrow them and set up the Messiah's kingdom. But I do find it interesting that these aren't the Roman guards really who come. These are the servants of the priests and the elders. So it seems like the disciples get a picture of, we have to overthrow the spiritual regime, right, in addition to the physical one. But they know now that Judas is a betrayer. They know that Judas has chosen a side opposite. And our good friend Peter, his response is, draw the sword and shed some blood, right? Again,
Like every 30-year-old.
right. This is the moment of the disciples where really they got it wrong. They missed the major point that Jesus was stressing to them. And they wouldn't have understood it. The scriptures make it clear that strike the shepherd and the sheep would be scattered. But this is a division between what Jesus came to do and what people thought he came to do. Jesus came to die, to save from sin. The disciples thought he came for a revolution. And so once this revolution begins, we don't see it in Mark, we see it in Matthew. Jesus says, "Put your sword in its place, for all that take the sword shall perish by the sword." And then he turns outwards to those that are his captors and say, "I have been in the temple, you've had every opportunity," really using this as a moment to call out their cowardice, to call out their intentions. You're not here to do right, you're here to do evil. You're here to do wickedness. It doesn't persuade anyone, but it does identify where they are at. And then, at that moment, after Jesus says, "Put your swords away," when the arrest finally happens, the disciples all scatter. And out of fear, out of presuming the battle which they were ready to fight has already been lost, whatever the case, they scatter. Mark records, this moment of a young man desiring to follow him, wearing his night clothing in the middle of the night, following after this spectacle of Jesus being carried away. We presume this to be young John Mark himself, the author of the gospel, simply because he's the only one who records it, the only one who would identify this whatsoever.
The
Only
only
who
one
brings
who
up
mentions
this
the naked
little
boy.
detail, right? So we presume it to be John Mark, the best assumption we have, kind of putting himself into that narrative. But it is, another perspective of look at this spectacle. For those that follow Jesus, like, I want to know what's going on here. For those that might be questioning or might not be the closest of disciples, but are curious about Jesus, what is this? He's come, he's turned over tables, he's been introduced through the fanfare of Palm Sunday, and so there's a lot of curiosity around Jesus, I think is what that helps us identify. So far that's what is happening. Luke and John have a couple more details for us. Let's take a look at them. Isaiah, if you read Luke 22, 47 through 53.
And while he yet speak, behold a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them, and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? And they which were about him saw what would follow. They said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? And one of them smote the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. And Jesus answered and said, Suffer ye thus far. And he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus said unto the chief priests and captains of the temple and the elders which were come to him, Be ye come out as against a thief with swords and staves? When I was daily with you in the temple, ye stretched forth no hands against me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness.
Thank you very much. So we have here just a couple other details that Luke will provide for us. We get the question, right? Shall we smite with the sword? But doesn't wait for an answer, right? Just starts swinging. We also have the healing of the ear, which isn't mentioned in Mark and Matthew. Jesus, which probably explains why the disciples fled rather than continuing to fight. Jesus not only says it's enough, but he also heals the servant. He doesn't permit the violence to continue. It's not just a rebuke of Peter, it's an undoing of the work that's being done. We're not doing this. Like, we're absolutely not going this way. Go ahead.
Actually, so far, none of the books have identified Peter.
Yeah, yeah. I said Luke and John, but you're right. It's only one left.
It's just
John's
John.
on Peter. Yeah. Go ahead, Isaiah.
I find it interesting that in Matthew, I think it mentions he who lives by the sword will die by the sword. But it also, with Luke saying that all the disciples were ready to fight and Peter was the disciple that has not been named yet, was the one to actually pull the trigger for this. Kind of gives more context of, like, in this moment, if you're going to draw the sword, you're going to die, rather than, like, a model to live by.
Yeah, right. Well, and there's biblical ground for that. He who sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. But, you're right. It's for the disciples, it's probably a warning for the moment of, like, hey, if you're going to take up swords, you're going to fall by them. That's a good point.
Well, Peter's automatic thing was, we have to defend.
Yeah.
We have to protect, we have to defend.
Yeah. We have to win this battle, right? And here's our first battle to fight. And Jesus says, if you fight this battle, you will lose. Because God's desire, God's purpose, is for them to take him.
Yeah, but
And
I think Peter's real desire was to protect Christ.
I think so, yeah.
So
Absolutely,
that's
yeah.
like, these guys are coming, and he's like, oh, no, not on my watch, kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah. No, I agree. Not to say that he's ready to, like, bloodthirsty and rubbing his hands like I've been waiting for a fight. No, you're right. It's certainly to fight alongside Christ. That's the desire, to fight for him, right? So the passion is good, but again, the only problem is the same problem Jesus has had with them from the beginning. Look at the spiritual. Look at what's happening here. And if you look, you'll see that this is a battle that if you fight it with sword, you will lose. because God's desire is salvation, and it comes by the hands of these men. For our Jeremiah study, it makes me think of Babylon, right? Like for the Israelites, like we have to fight this battle. Like this is our battle to fight. We have to win. But Jeremiah goes out saying, no, like you will lose. If you fight, you will lose. God is with the army. And this isn't, because, and really, I mean, yeah, it is because the people have sinned, but it's not just Israel now. It's for the sins of the whole world. Jesus has to lose for the sins of the whole world. He has to be put to death so we may have salvation. I think there's a beautiful parallel between what we see in Jeremiah and the Gospels. That there is call of surrender to the forces of judgment. But for us, it's not I'm going to be judged. It's Jesus has been judged for my sake and took that upon himself. And that's a beautiful thing.
I wouldn't say that Jesus had to lose because
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't
Jesus
die.
had to die. Yeah.
he
Jesus
had
had to
to, but that was
Lose
the
from the
plan.
perspective of
Right.
So he had to stick to the plan.
Yes, by being arrested, if you forgive me,
As Isaiah
by
said-
losing the battle, he wins the battle. He wins the war.
Isaiah said, from the perspective of the disciples, he lost.
Yes, there you go. From the perspective of the disciples, he loses, but really Jesus is winning the ultimate battle.
Well, to die is to gain.
And yeah, thank you, Becky, for your out of context contribution there. Go ahead, Henry.
I just find it amazing that the high priests were so against Jesus that he does a miracle right in front of their eyes, and they're still like, no,
I've often thought
you're
that.
getting arrested. I mean, he just put a guy's ear back on.
Yeah.
And like it worked. It
Well,
wasn't
and
like Stevie glued
And
it.
even like in John is even more so in John. But you're right, that is an interesting. Like he heals them where they would come at him with swords. He heals them, and they say, "Well, we're here to do what we're gonna do," and it's But it is.
I vaguely remember. I don't know if it was part of a sight and sound thing or something about the guy that got his ear healed was like. You know what I'm talking about? That
I do. I feel the same. I think I know what
and
you're
he's
saying.
like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this now.
It might have been in Sight and Sound.
Are we the
Where
baddies?
he has a moment of pause.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
a
What am I doing
servant,
here?
though.
Yeah.
He's not like
Yeah.
he's a servant. He's doing what he was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he does. This man will come back later. He will come back when we talk about Peter's betrayal. So but it certainly makes you wonder, like, if the other ones are continuing, what's he thinking? Like he lost his ear. In that day and age, it's kind of like the loss of blood might be a death sentence, But yet Jesus heals that.
Well, it's a good thing that he only got his ear. I'm sure that, Peter had just woken up from a nap. You know how drunk you are when you wake up. And
Yeah.
he's like, just swing the
He
sword
was going for
around.
the neck.
Just swing the sword out. He didn't get him in the head. He didn't get his
Yeah.
collarbone. He got him right in the ear.
Which does show you, Peter was going for a killing blow. Like he
Oh,
was
yeah.
intended to kill this man, But by God's grace, it didn't happen that way.
Well, maybe if Jesus had brought somebody back from the dead, they would have changed their mind. But,
Not in this case.
Just an ear.
Yeah, just in here.
Just
That's
a
all.
flash wound. Just a flash wound.
Isaiah, you had your hand up before too.
It was what Noah pointed out before about the fact that the disciples' point of view, Jesus lost because they are looking at it in the physical, they are looking at it at the temporary.
Yeah, it's a loss to them, the loss of the battle they're ready to fight, but it's not the battle they were even intended to fight. This is Jesus' battle to die for them. Very good. So we turn to John. Now John's perspective, as it often is very different. Luke's might be a little different. John's is very different. And if you thought that the miracle of the healing of the ear was an interesting moment, which would give you pause, more so in John.
Yeah,
So
John
let's take a
sounds
look
very
at John 18, 2 through 12. Again, same story, different perspective. And so we see, it's not that this is a contradiction, but it adds more to the story going on here. Go ahead, Gretchen.
2 through 12.
Yes, please.
And Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with.
Fair.
Wrong,
You're
wrong
fine.
testament.
Wrong tested it.
Came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, "Whom are you seeking?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." And Judas, who betrayed him, also stood with them. Now when he had said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Then he asked them again, saying, "Who are you seeking?" And they said, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus answered, "I have told you that I am he. Therefore, if you seek me, let these go their way, that the saying might be fulfilled which he spoke. Of those which you gave me, whom you gave me, I have lost none." Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me?" Then did the detachment of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him.
Okay. So really the similarity here is what we, that missing piece. John fills in the missing piece here.
It was an ear.
Peter being the one
He did, in fact.
to cut off the ear of the servant. But we have even before this an even more interesting conversation, which we might miss in our English translations of the Bibles.
Oh, guess
If
gotta learn
you're
our language now.
Zechariah.
What's that? So if you guys have your Bibles in front of you.
Yes.
But, can I make an observation?
Okay.
John doesn't say that he that he healed the ear. He just said he cut it off.
Right. Yeah.
So John names who it was, but doesn't tell you
Yeah.
the whole story.
Well, and I often
Go
we
John.
look at as John as being the latest gospel writer. And this is just how I picture. I'm not sure exactly how accurate this is, but it's kind of pictured in a lot of academic circles. Is John is like the last gospel writer, the latest one. So he often fills in the gaps and gives clarity. Like in the very beginning, where he says Jesus often went here with his disciples. Reading the other ones, you're like, well, Judas just knew where he went. Like, how did Judas know where to find Jesus? But John says no. That might have been a criticism to the gospel writers, but John says no. Like, Judas knew where to find him.
So do you,
So-
do you
Is
think
Luke the
that
only one
John
that says
wrote
put
this
your back?
after he read everybody else's account?
I do
The
think
doctor.
yes. Yeah,
I
I
was
do.
gonna say the
And so I think that
This is the same John wrote Revelation, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So he had lots of time to reflect because he
Yeah.
was sitting on the island by himself and a scribe.
Exactly. So he's being later, he gets to see some of the criticism, see some of the church's response, and we see some of the gaps filled in. I think that's intentional. Why John goes so different is because he says, well, they've already done the work. Let me do my part that's different from these guys, And so, but we see too, again, the detail of Simon Peter is another one of those examples of like, well, nobody said who it was. I'll just tell them, Peter is the one who swung the sword, who stroked this.
Then he named Malchus. So there had to be more after that
Yes.
that John had either talked to Malchus or
Yeah.
Malchus had a story to tell. Otherwise it would have just been some servant who Jesus put his ear back on and he kept on getting arrested
Yeah.
and whatever. There wasn't been a name.
And that is another subtle, again, like nothing set in stone, but like a subtle indication that maybe this servant changed. Because oftentimes the gospel, like people are named that Christians would know. And so like we see the person, Simon of Cyrene, who's the man who carried the cross, named. Because his children, Rufus and Alexander, are mentioned in epistles, like as members of the church. Like people know who they are now, so very well might have been that Malchus was known in the church as a person who, by a people, like, hey, he was the one who witnessed Jesus and saw him there. So and again, like this is kind of presumption, but based on some evidence that, there's a reason for all these.
Well, and if his
details.
ear got cut off and then put back on, you think he's not gonna tell anybody?
Yeah, if we put ourselves in that situation, we're probably if you're a receiver of Jesus' miracles, you probably believe him. Let's be honest. So,
But it's
yeah.
also
What do you think?
interesting, here, they don't mention Judas's kiss,
Mhm.
but he does say, when they say we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, he says, I am.
Yes.
And that's the thing, they're like, you just said I am,
Yeah.
and I know our Bibles add he.
Yes, but you're right. That's not what it says. You're absolutely right. And that's the detail that John adds, which is important. Which okay, the other gospel writers didn't mention this. Probably worth mentioning here. When verse 5, I don't know. I know you have your hand up, Isaiah. I'll get to you. Since we're here, we'll
That's
talk
fine.
about this, and we'll come back
No, I
here.
have
So let me. We'll talk about this briefly. The I am, and I'll take your point. In verse 5. They answered to who Jesus is seeking. He says, I am. Often, if your Bible has that in italicized, the he, it means it's not in the original manuscripts, it's added for clarity. While that can sometimes be helpful, in this case it's not. Because the phrase, I am, is the Old Testament phrase, Yahweh. How God identifies himself to Moses in the burning bush. He says, when Moses says, God, who shall I tell them sent me? He says, tell them the I am has sent me. I am who I am. And so this is the name of God that Jesus is taking on. He's not just saying, oh, I'm the guy. He's saying, I am. Why else would they fall down backward to the ground at such a command, other than Jesus gives them the name of God himself? Then they scramble up and say, and he asks them again, now who are you looking for? They tell him again, he says, I've told you that I am. And that is the moment of clarity and power of Jesus. It's an identification of him with God the Father, an identification with Yahweh of the Old Testament. Again, another moment where how would they not realize, other than this is God's divine work, to put Jesus to death, to lead him to the cross, for the sake of all mankind. And so it's more than, again, it's not, we see the physical. You see swords swung, you see clubs and axes, you see lanterns in a dark night sky, but it's really the judgment of all mankind preparing to lay itself upon Jesus. And that is dark, but it's spiritual, and it goes way beyond all the physical things going on here. Thank you for being patient, Sam. Go ahead.
So the Mount of Olives itself was mentioned way back in the Old Testament, specifically when David was running from his son Absalom. That was one of the places they ended up going to in their little escapade, I guess.
What a wacky word for it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I'd have to look more into that to see the significance of that. But mountains do tend to have a significance as to their place in here. I'd like to look into that more. So we'll have more commentary on that. That's an interesting topic to explore. Go ahead.
Verse 8, back to him saying to you that I am.
Yeah.
John is the only one that, little details that John throws in here, let these go their way.
Mm-hmm.
Other accounts by Matthew, Mark, and Luke, I don't know which order or who it was, said the disciples ran away.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus
Yeah.
like, let these guys go. I mean, I realize that the sword thing happened after Jesus said that.
Yeah.
So now they're kind of like, oh no, Jesus said we can go, and now you're cutting off people's ear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we need to get out of here.
Yeah, so that's true. It does add a little bit more detail there, where after, it's not just, oh, they're scattered, but it's, maybe they're in danger, and so Jesus gives them a moment to flee. But it's also, we see the significance too in John, like Matthew, is like, it's for the scriptures. He says but it's really kind of fulfilling what he just spoke in John 17. I haven't lost any that you have sent me. And we don't really have and it's not really pointing to an Old Testament, it's pointing to what he said in John 17. I have lost none of them. I haven't lost them to death, I haven't lost them to the evil one. He's saying that here, like, I'm not gonna lose them to this battle right here and right now. Go on your way. So yeah, for the disciples, this is the moment. Like, all that protesting, like, I'm the greatest, and like, I'm gonna stay with you to the end, it all collapses right here. This is a moment, not just for Peter, but for all the disciples, of humility. Of let's rethink really how we're going to respond to Jesus when push comes to shove. This isn't really the moment of persecution, although it may feel like that to them. This is a moment of Jesus leaving them that they need to be prepared for. Be prepared for the Spirit to lead them once Jesus raises from the dead. But now wrestling with that, the phrase that Jesus has been telling them time and time again, I'm going to die, I'm going to leave you, I will be delivered to these men. And it's happening not figuratively, but literally as Jesus said it, I am going to die. I will be delivered. And here he is. So now, yeah, go ahead.
There's one more quick thing.
No, go ahead.
About Malchus,
Yeah.
verse 26. Yes. Verse 26, I know I'm getting ahead of you.
Yeah.
But
I may stop you depending on where we go. But
Malchus'
go ahead.
cousin is one of the people that says, no, Peter, you're the guy that cut his ear off.
Yeah. He was one of the ones standing with them to call them out.
Another small detail that John throws in there,
Yeah.
like, hey, I know who all these people are,
Yeah. Can't really deny that.
Yeah.
I know, looked you in the eye.
No.
You can deny Jesus, but you can't deny the part where you cut his ear
Right.
off.
Yes, you can. His ear's still there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah? Let me
Nope.
see the ear.
That's funny. As he's bleeding down his face.
No,
Anyway,
everything's
let's-
covered in blood, but his
Yeah.
ear's fine.
Yeah.
You can't see any injury.
See, paint.
Pig's
ahead.
blood.
Another
fine.
thing that, and maybe I missed it, but
You
in
just
verse
sacrificed
12,
him today.
John mentions that they bound Jesus. Did they mention that? not.
I didn't see that.
No, they didn't
No, I
mention
don't
that in
think
Mark.
so.
They say that arrested him, so I
Yeah.
guess that truly
So-
depends on the context of arresting back
Yeah, yeah,
in.
yeah.
And like, if he's just going with you, why do you feel the need to find
Yeah. No, I
He
think
might put someone else's ear back on.
probably I think for the Pharisees and for the Sanhedrin, it looks like
He might control the
because what the Sanhedrin's about to do, although it is shady and underhanded, it's happening in the dead of night. This is meant to be a formal, genuine arrest. Like, we're not just putting you to death. Like, you've done something wrong and we have to put you on trial. It's happening all in the middle of the night for a reason, but they have to make it official. So this is indeed an arrest, and the bindings are part of that, right? Like, oh, you've done something wicked and evil. We have to bring you before us, even though nothing that Jesus has done could be deserving of such a punishment as this. So even willingly, yes, he's got to come, in cuffs, or else the high priest might have something to say when Jesus arrives unbound, right, when he gets there. Go ahead.
Well, not only is this happening like on the night of the Passover, where really nobody's supposed to be out anyway, but also this is.
Wait, yeah. Wait a second.
Don't worry about that.
But also, like, they
Don't
have to do
think
this
about
at
it
night
too
because at the moment, this is coming like a couple of weeks after Lazarus' resurrection and coming right on the heels of the triumphal entry. Jesus is like really, really popular right now. If they were to do this publicly, it would be a big old thing.
Yeah.
And then Rome
They-
would have to get involved. At the moment, they don't want Rome involved until they know they've already got him.
Right.
They
Yeah.
even mentioned that earlier. It's just like we have to do this very particularly because he has the people's favor.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of this is we will break down, and we're going to turn there right now. We're going to look to the trial, because this is what's happening here is not just go crucify Jesus. It's a trial, and it's politics, and there's all these things involved. So let's turn there. Gretchen, I have you to read for us a couple different portions within John 18. The first event that happens after Jesus is arrested is he's taken to Annas, a high priest, and we'll break down all these events as we read it. I want you to read for us, Gretchen, John 18, 12 through 14, and then 19 through 23.
Okay.
We'll skip over the Peter portion, we'll come back.
Then the detachment of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. Then they led him away to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. Now it was Caiaphas who advised the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. 19 through 23.
Yes, please.
The high priest then asked Jesus about his disciples and his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in the temple, where the Jews always met. And in secret I have said nothing. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard me what I've said to them. Indeed, they know what I said. And when he had said these things, one of the officers who stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Do you answer the high priest like that? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me?
Thank you very much. So we have here, Jesus is brought before a number of people. And the first one to hear the case is the high priest. Now in Jewish tradition, there is only one high priest. He serves the entirety of his life. And when he dies, his son is the one to take over. We read that Annas and Caiaphas are both interchangeably called high priests. And that's really the conflict of Jewish and Roman perspectives. The Jews say, once a high priest, always a high priest. The Romans say, no, that sounds a lot like a king. That's not allowed. And so periodically they would remove a high priest and make them, the next in line come. There was 4 during the time of Annas, 4 of his sons or sons-in-law who were also considered high priests, but in the Jewish respect, Annas is always the high priest. And so that's why they come to him first, even though it's, in verse 13, John says, Caiaphas was high priest that same year. Annas is in charge in the Jewish eye, Caiaphas in charge in the Roman eye. Go ahead.
Not only is it because that seems very kingly to
Yeah.
have one person in charge for that amount of time,
Yeah.
the Romans also viewed having one person in an extended period of time, they would grow stale, they'd grow complacent, they'd start to make friends, they'd start to make alliances.
That's true.
And so, they would frequently have people rotate, and because Pilate was only governor over Israel was only like a couple of years.
And he was
It's
only
the
there.
worst couple of years of his life.
I think
Yes.
he was only there because he had a falling out with Caesar.
Correct.
Very good.
So,
Good job, guys.
in order to
You'll be
pro-
remembering these through the years.
Yeah, well,
Your own studies, I'm sure. but-
well, if America would learn a thing or two.
The
You
one
start-
thing they should learn from
Wait,
Rome.
start fighting with Caesar?
Yes.
No.
But the whole idea with that is they see one person in power for an extended period of time. It's like, how can you rule?
Yeah.
You know, you get 10, 15, 20, 50 years down the line, it's the same guy.
And I mean, what's the worry there? The worry is corruption,
Yep.
right? Abuse of power, and
We don't know anything about that.
look at where we're at with the Jewish Sanhedrin, right? Annas is in charge all this time, and it is corrupt to the point where they would, that when Jesus the Messiah comes and threatens their rule, their line of authority, they take action against him. Because while there is a spiritual side, Jesus must die. It doesn't excuse Annas and Caiaphas and the leaders of the Sanhedrin what they're already doing, already selfishly establishing themselves as king and rulers rather than God himself, rather than Jesus, the only true living God. So yeah, so we have here is them him brought before Annas, and really the only one who could actually accuse him and bring him on. So, and Jesus, Jesus questions. He questions the high priest. What have I done? Not anything disrespectful, but why am I here? Like, what are you doing to bring me here? And one of the officers strike him. Jesus says, if I've spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why do you strike me? And again, what am I doing wrong? All Jesus is doing here is asking questions to reveal the sinfulness of the Sanhedrin. And it's during this back and forth, Jesus taken from Annas to Caiaphas, that we see a lot of the events take place with the disciples. Jesus is standing trial before different people, and in the midst of that is when Peter makes his denial. So we're not going to get to Peter's denial. There's no point trying to capture all that right now.
What Sean meant to say is he tried getting a rooster in the church today for his
That's right.
example,
I need
but he
another
couldn't
week
catch
to
it.
You have 3 minutes.
Hear that? That's right. Yeah. So I don't even
Pack
think
it
we
in,
can
pack
get
it in.
through our next section of. Yeah, no, right. We're not going to get through even our next section. But what happens from here is after John records this for us, Jesus is sent from Annas to Caiaphas, not the Jewish high priest, but the acting high priest, the one that the Romans would consider the one in charge for the year. And then it's at this point in these transitionings from house to house and from court to court that we find Peter out in, warming his hands by the fire in the midst of these conversations, talking with people who would challenge him that he was with Jesus and he will commit his denial of Christ. So this becomes the climax of Peter's story in the Gospels. Really from this we turn back over to Christ, it becomes the Gospel, and then we see Peter again after Jesus is resurrected. So that'll be kind of the climax of our conversation with Peter next week when we talk about the denial. So thank you guys, that's where we'll close it for today. Appreciate the conversation. There's a lot of history here, so I'm glad to go a little deeper and just see the events of Jesus go on as the disciples. So let's close up in prayer. Heavenly Father, we're grateful. We are so thankful that you have gathered us here to worship you. And we're thankful for the Word of God, which teaches us, instructs us, and guides us. I ask for your blessing now, Lord, as we go. That these words, the reflection on the disciples, may not just be a story for us, but it'll be a story with meaning and purpose. That we can learn, take this story, and move in a direction where our lives are just brought nearer to you. And Lord, teach us not only to draw nearer to you ourselves, but to make disciples of all nations. And to find the joy that comes from nearness with you and leading people onwards to Christ. We ask this, we pray this, we offer this now before you.